Well, once Adam comes back in.
So please, I'll stand. Coroners Court is now sitting.
Good morning. Today I'll be asking Ms Stevens to open the inquest into the death of Richard Steele.
Thank you, Anna. This is the inquest into the death of Richard Steele. Richard Steele, or Rick as he was known to all, was a resident of Coronal, and he died after the fire reached his property on the early morning of the 31st of December 2019. Rick was 56 years old. He had one sister, Martine. He shared a close relationship with Martine, and she will provide a family statement through me at the end of these proceedings. The evidence of Rick's background is that he grew up in Newcastle and moved to southern regional New South Wales and settled for a time around the township of Wallagaloot. He lived a somewhat transient existence and moved around southern New South Wales for a number of years. As at December 2019, he considered his home a granny flat at Coolagallite Road in Coolagallite. Rick lived at this property and had done for some years with a friend, Ernie, who lived in the main house. Ernie owned the property. They had met at the Bermagui market some years before, and Your Honour will hear that they both loved plants. Rick had a number of good friends in the area and at the time was in a relationship with Elkie McDonald. She lived in Bega. Martine, Ernie and Elkie have all provided comprehensive statements to Your Honour in regard to Rick and his background. I'll pause here, Your Honour, and show the court some photographs of Rick taken by Elkie. This is on her property. This was not not too long before his death, Your Honour, this photograph. And then the second, it's a photograph with one of Elkie's dogs. And third, Your Honour, one of Rick's prized orchids. He had at his property hundreds of orchids. Ernie says about 650. And Your Honour will learn that unfortunately they were all lost in the fires. He was an avid grower both of orchids and of elkhorns. He was well known at the local markets and sold his plants through a Facebook page, The Potted Log. He also worked as a carer for a number of in-home care organisations and also as a cleaner. I'll show you, Your Honour, an aerial photograph of the property where Rick lived. We can zoom in to the bottom left-hand corner. Your Honour will see Coolagolite Road that cuts across that map. The circled property at the bottom left is Rick's granny flat, and then Ernie's house, which was the main house, is just above it. Your Honour will see quite an amount of dense bushland behind the granny flat, and the road, Coolagolite Road, is the only road in and out of that property. The brief of evidence that's been tendered before the court demonstrates that in the days leading up to the fire, both Rick and Ernie were at home in their respective parts of the property. Rick discussed with Ernie the fires, and he was tracking them on the Bureau of Meteorology website. On the 30th of December, which is the day before the fire hit that property, together they tracked it on the Bureau of Meteorology website and considered it to be nearest to them at Dignam's Creek, which was about 7 to 8 years away. Ernie says in his statement that on that day they were not too worried about the fire. Ernie will give evidence before the court shortly. The evidence further demonstrates that throughout the evening of the 30th of December and then the early morning of the 31st of December, conditions worsened significantly, and at 4:40 in the morning, Rick was awoken by a phone call from Ernie from the main house. He himself, that is Ernie, had received a phone call on his landline warning him of the fires. Rick attended at Ernie's house, and they had both received text messages from the RFS. One of them read, "Quorma residents advised to evacuate to Bermagui," and the second one read, "Cobargo residents advised to evacuate to Bermagui." Coolagolite is close, about 6 kilometres from Cobargo. At around 5 a.m, the two men discussed the fire and agreed on a fire plan. Ernie will inform Your Honour in evidence that they agreed on a plan whereby they would stay at the property and use a pump to bring water from the dam. They agreed that in the event the power was cut, they would leave immediately. Ernie will give evidence that at about 5:15 that morning, the power failed and they both went quickly to their individual houses to pack their belongings. Each had their own car parked at the property. During this short period between when the power was cut and when they were both packing, the conditions changed again. The wind moved from a breeze to a strong westerly gust, and the temperature became very hot for that time of the morning. Ernie will give evidence that he heard crackling and an ember attack descended on the property. Spot fires began breaking out around the perimeter of the property. Within a short period of time, the main house, Ernie's house, caught fire, and he saw huge branches hurtling through the air. They decided they needed to leave. Ernie got into his car and drove away, but realised not too long after that Rick was not behind him in his car. He returned to the property but was not able to get to Rick's granny flat due to the fire. His own house was well alight. He waited until the fire had passed and made his way as best he could up to Rick's granny flat. He found that parts of it were on fire and the roof had collapsed. He saw that Rick's car remained parked and was on fire. Your Honour, we'll see some photographs now taken by investigating police some days later. Your Honour, we'll see the roof of the granny flat is completely gone in that photograph. It's the same structure, just from a slightly different angle. When Ernie realised that both properties had been destroyed, the fire was still in the area and he considered it too dangerous to stay, and he went back down Coolagolite Road, and Your Honour will hear that he encountered some RFS personnel and they assisted him further. The police, in their investigation, later examined the mobile phone records of Rick in order to try and identify at what time the fire encountered the property and what Rick did. It appears that the last known contact was with his sister Martine. And Your Honour will see from her statement her perspective of that morning, and she was with her family at Borley Point, and she says, also staying at Borley Point, I continued to monitor what was happening with the fires. On the 30th of December, so that's the day before, I saw that a fire had started around the Cabargo area and felt that this was roughly the area where Richard was living. I remember checking the Fires Near Me app a few hours later and noticed that the fire in this area had increased rapidly in size. As a result of this development, I sent a message to Richard. I needed to know that he was okay. I sent a message at 5:38 a.m. on the 31st of December, which read, "Hey big brother, are you anywhere near these disgusting fires? We are still at Borley Point, not leaving till next week. All good here. Most of the area around us is burnt already. Can you send me your address so I know where you are?" I'll pause and say, Your Honour, although Martine and Rick had a very close relationship, she had never actually been to that property. She received a reply at 5:54 a.m. and the message read, "My address is 299 Coolagolite Road, Coolagolite. Seems the south got lit yesterday. Just received message to head to Bermagui and evacuate. Enormous amounts of activity on farms right now as they are moving their stock. Can see flames in distance. Today will be interesting. We'll keep you informed." Martine says she sent an immediate reply to this text at 5:58 a.m. and the message read, "Shit, I had a feeling during the night you were close. What are your plans? Please keep me updated." At 6:03, she sent another message which read, "Please be safe. Can't believe how quickly it's burning." And another text message, "I'm hoping you're safe." Your Honour, it's the opinion of the officer in charge of the investigation, Senior Constable Bradley, that these text messages were the last sent and received by Rick, and his response was the last communication that he had with anybody. It's clear that Rick was not able to escape from the fire on that day, and it's not clear whether he attempted to evacuate with Ernie or whether he had changed his mind and stayed on the property in order to try and protect it or his plans. The RFS attended the property the following day, that is the 1st of January, and at about 10:30am they located remains inside that granny flat, which were later identified as Rick's. On this day, Martine was making desperate attempts to find out about her brother. As I set out earlier, her family had been in Borley Point, but they travelled down through Batemans Bay and towards Browley. They drove down further to Bermagui, searching for mobile reception. They arrived in Bega and stayed there and tried to contact him again. The following day, Martine made further inquiries with the Red Cross in terms of his whereabouts. Your Honour, Martine says further that on the 2nd of January, I saw a post that had been on Facebook by Philip Shipton. The post was about his brother and what he had gone through, as in regard to the fires. There was also a link to a newspaper article about it as well. I made a comment on this post which said, "Just wondering if anyone knows Richard Rick Steele of 299 Coolagolite Road. I have been trying to contact him with no luck. He is my brother. If anyone can help locate him, I would be greatly appreciated. Last contact I had with him was Tuesday morning. Thanks in advance." Philip Shipton, a local in the area, then sent a reply which read, "Martine will see what I can find out for you tomorrow." Martine sent a further message to Philip, who, of course, Your Honour, she did not know, and it read, "Philip Shipton, thank you so much. I know from what I've read that you guys are doing it tough there. My thoughts go out to you and your families. I'm trying everything to find him. Bigger police won't help. I don't know what else to do. I appreciate your efforts greatly. Thank you." Philip sent a further message which read, "Thanks, Martine. I'll get onto it first thing on the morning for you." She concludes by saying, "Over the course of the following days, there were several messages going backwards and forwards between myself and Philip. Philip told me he had passed on my details to a friend who he knew in the detectives at Bega, and they were investigating the whereabouts of Rick. It was through this contact, Your Honour, that Martine was able to successfully contact the relevant people in Bega and learn more what had happened to her brother, and also enabled the police to positively identify him." Your Honour, I call Ernie Berger.
Mr. Berger, can you see and hear us? Mr. Berger? There, I think you're there. Can you see and hear us, Mr. Berger? Can you hear us, Mr. Berger? We can see you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'll just ask the court officer now to see if you'd like to take the oath or affirmation.
The oath would be fine.
Thank you.
Silence, please. Do you swear by Almighty God that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Ms. Stevens.
So will you give your full name to the court?
Ernst Berger.
Mr. Berger, did you provide a statement to investigating police in March of last year about these bushfires?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Berger, you may have heard my opening. I'm going to ask you some questions about what happened on the 30th and 31st of December 2019. Firstly, the property at 299 Coolagolite Road, did you own that property?
Yes.
Can you tell the court about its size and topography?
It was 20 acres with 3 buildings, mostly grass paddocks with a little bit of farm forestry.
And was the property accessed through Coolagolite Road?
Yes.
And was there only one road in and one road out of the property?
Yes.
Did you live in the main house and Rick Steele live in the granny flat?
Yes, that's right. Rick lived in the granny flat.
And did you live by yourself in the main house?
Yes, me and my wife have separated.
And can you tell the court, please, Mr. Berger, what's the distance between the granny flat and your house?
Oh, between 150 to 200 metres.
And did you have a clear view of the granny flat from your place?
Oh, could you please repeat that?
Did you have a clear view from the granny flat from your house?
No.
So you couldn't see the house?
No, there was a garage in the way.
In your statement, Mr. Berger, you explained that you'd met Rick at, is it the Bermagui markets?
Initially, yes.
And did you have your own stall at those markets?
Yes. Yes.
And what did
Rick
you
and
sell?
myself both enjoyed plants, and we both sold plants.
And what kind of plants did Rick sell?
Mostly orchids.
And what about yourself?
I had a range of bromeliads, succulents, carnivorous plants, and bonsais.
And can you tell, in regards to the granny flat and your property, where did Rick keep all of his orchids?
Sorry?
Where did Rick keep his orchids?
Next to his granny flat.
And how many do you think he had at the time of the fires?
In excess of 2,000.
And did they involve a lot of work?
Yes, he mounted them on timbers and all sorts of artistic displays. He was always busy.
Now, on the day before the fires came through the property, can you describe the conditions around the property in terms of where the fire developed and whether you knew it was there?
The day beforehand, fire was still quite a long way away. In general conditions, were extremely dry and very warm.
And did you have concerns about your property at that time?
The day beforehand, no.
Did Rick have any concerns about the property?
No.
Did you talk about the fires on that day?
Yes, we talked about it leading up to it as the fire, from when the fire started at Dignam's Creek.
And around about what time was that?
Well, we'd spoken about it for 2 to 3 days beforehand. We used to check on the Bureau of Meteorology weather map for the rainfall, and the bushfires showed up as like a localised storm. So if you looked up the Bureau of Met map, you could actually see where the fires were.
Did you and Rick have a fire plan about what you would do if the fire encroached on your property?
Well, the plan was to leave. We're not on town water. Everything was so dry that no amount of water would have stopped any fire. So we just kept an eye out and were basically prepared to leave.
In your statement, you say that at around 4:30 in the morning of the 31st of December, you were woken up by your landline ringing. Is that the case?
That's correct, yes.
And did you answer the phone?
Yes, I had actually fallen asleep in the living room, so I was next to the phone. I went to the phone, picked it up, but all I heard was loud crackles, interference, and then total silence. And the phone line just went dead.
In your statement, you say that you got out of bed and began making yourself a cup of coffee in the kitchen. You looked out the kitchen window. What did you see at that time?
I saw a red glow on the horizon and went outside to my driveway, and you could see in the hills to the southwest a red glow, in the back of the hills, but no actual flames or fires.
And what was the temperature at that time?
It was quite warm for that time of morning.
And what about the wind?
Sorry?
What about the wind?
The wind at that stage was a light breeze coming off the ocean, so from the east. Basically, the opposite direction to where the fire was. So as I'm looking at the fire, I've got a light breeze in my back.
Did you alert Rick to the phone call at that time?
No, the phone call that woke me up was the only phone call I ever got. But after assessing the situation, I walked up to the granny flat and woke up Rick.
And what did you say to him?
Basically, he said that it might be a good time to be awake. Somebody just tried to contact me, and so Rick got out of bed and also made a cup of coffee, and we both looked at went down the driveway and checked out the situation.
And is it around that time that Rick showed you some alerts on his mobile from the RFS?
Yes, he did.
And were those alerts advising Quorma residents and Cobargo residents to evacuate?
That's correct. First Quorma and shortly afterwards Cobargo got told to evacuate.
And what did you do in response to those messages?
Well, we hadn't received any messages for Coolagolite to evacuate. So Rick kept the phone on and we waited for more information.
When did you next see the fire move towards your property?
Could you please excuse me for 1 second? Kannst du das aushalten? My mum's making some noise and I can't hear you.
That's okay.
Okay, can we try again, please?
What did you next see in terms of the development of the fire?
Both myself and Rick were keeping an eye on down the driveway for probably 3/4 of an hour. But nothing changed at that stage.
And when did something change?
Not until, well, it's hard to tell the time now because the power went out and we were busy with other things. I think it was probably a bit after 5 when the power went out. And I said to Rick, with no power, we have no water, because Rick had been contemplating, won't be so bad with this little wind, it'll only be a grass fire, I might stay and fight it. But
And when-
without power, no water, we both decided it would be a good idea to pack some bags and get ready to leave just in case the wind changed.
So is it the case that initially he thought he might stay and then he changed his mind?
Initially, with the wind going in the right direction, we didn't feel in any danger.
And what was it that actually triggered you to pack your belongings and put them in a car?
The power out.
And where was the fire when you were packing your cars?
Still in the same place, probably about, the hill that the glow was behind is about 3 kilometres to the southwest of the property. So beyond that.
Can you tell the court about how the fire progressed towards your property?
Certainly. Probably about half an hour after the power went out, by flashlight, packed some clothes and some papers, and I was just outside at my car, putting the bag in the car when the wind changed. And instead of being a slight easterly breeze off the ocean, it suddenly turned into a strong, almost gale force from the west, straight from behind the fire. And as I closed the car door after putting my bag in, the wind hit me full on in the face. I thought I was in trouble then. I grabbed one of my cats, which was at my feet, threw him in the car, and by that stage I looked up and there was fires maybe 500 metres away down the gully in front of the property already. By the time I walked to the driver door, the flames were at my property borderline. By the time I turned the car around, my driveway was on fire.
And
So
And just pausing there.
feeling safe to being on fire took less than 60 seconds.
And where was Rick during that period?
As I couldn't see the granny flat from where I was, I assume he was, doing the same thing, packing a bag and getting ready to run.
And had you agreed that you would each drive your own cars out of the property
Oh
and
yes,
down
Rick's car
Coroners
was
Road?
in front of the granny flat and mine was in front of my house.
And once you jumped in your car, what did you do next?
Sorry?
Once you jumped in your car, what did you do next?
Oh, I drove down the driveway and left my property and tried to get to Bermagui Road.
And did you get there?
No. Took quite a while as the flames were all around and visibility was maybe 2 metres, if that. And near the end of Coolagolite Road, before Bermagui Road, couple of tall, very large trees had fallen across the road, blocking the exit.
And at that point, did you know where Rick was?
No, not as yet. As I was there, and I turned around and facing down here, back towards my property again. I was hoping to see some headlights coming, as in Rick's car. But I sat there in a relative safe spot for felt like 10 minutes. I was starting to get very worried.
And what did you do then?
As the main grass fire had pretty much passed, I slowly made my way back to the property. And I tried to get towards the granny flat, but couldn't even get past the burning of my residence, which was on fire, and it was just too hot. So the only view of the granny flat where Rick was, could see that his car was still there.
And once you'd seen his car, what did you do next?
Well, apart from worrying even more, I changed the flat tyre which the bushfire had burnt into my car, and I slowly made my way down towards Bermagui Road again, which is where I found Narooma Fire Brigade just cutting through the paddock below that, just going through the paddocks because even they couldn't move for trees. And I told them the situation, and
Mr. Berger, when you say
I followed the fire brigade to my property, and but they told me, we got a little bit closer, but they said they couldn't do anything, and there was nothing I could do either.
And just pausing there, Mr. Berger, when you say you told them the situation, do you mean you told them that Rick was up there? Yes,
I told them that I'm missing, that Rick was missing, and I had serious concerns for his safety.
And what did the RFS members tell you in response to that?
Well, after having a quick look, they told me there's nothing they could do, and it would probably be a police matter.
In your statement, you've told the police the following: the RFS and I believed it was too unsafe to do anything.
That's what the RFS told me, yes. As the buildings were still on fire.
You've said in your statement, everything was still smouldering with fire and still extremely hot, in particular the tin roof. I couldn't see Richard. I was fearing the worst for Richard.
That's correct.
Where did you go after you'd spoken with the RFS officers?
I followed, I went back down the road again, trying to work out what to do. Actually, I sat out on the road outside my property and watched my house burn and the next door neighbour's house burn, and wondering what to do next.
And what did you do next?
Well, after driving down the road, I noticed some acquaintances further down the street that were, still fighting the fire at their residence, which was just, bushes and trees. So I offered a hand and spent the day with them, putting out spot fires.
Did you stay in the South Coast or did you go somewhere else?
On the 31st, there was no way to leave Coolagolite Road. So I stayed with the people I helped that night, and slept on the couch. And the following day, when a couple of the farmers and the big tractors cleared away the fallen trees, I assessed my options, and basically all I could do was to stay with family in Melbourne. So I made my way to Melbourne on the 1st.
And Mr. Berger, are you still staying with your family in Melbourne?
Yes.
And what's become of your property at Coolagolite?
My next door neighbour's expressing interest in buying it for his kids' family.
So
But it's
is it fair
still
to
there.
say, but you
It
have
got
not been
cleaned
in a
up by the
position,
clean-up crew, and
Mr.
due to
Berger,
a pandemic, I've been there once since.
is it the case that you have not been in a position to rebuild on that property?
That's correct. I wasn't insured.
Thank you for your evidence, Mr. Berger. Those are my questions.
Mr. Berger, I'm just going to see if there's any other questions for you. If you just wait one moment, please. Mr. Free.
No questions, Your Honour.
Mr. Glascott.
No questions, Your Honour. Thank you.
Mr. Berger, I'd like to thank you very much for giving your evidence today. It must have been really difficult to recall such a traumatic period of time for you, so I really appreciate it. Thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honour, I understand there have been some technical difficulties and we need a 5-minute adjournment. I'm sorry.
All right, we'll just adjourn briefly now and sort out those technical issues.
Please, I'll stand as far as temporary adjournment. please all stand. Coroners Court has resumed.
I understand that the problem's been fixed, and apologies for I think that there was no visuals, is that right?
There was some problem with the visuals,
Yeah.
Your Honour.
Well, hopefully that's fixed up now.
I understand that it is. Thank you for that time. Your Honour has now heard the evidence in regard to the inquest into the death of Richard Steele. I'd like to acknowledge in particular the presence of Martine, his sister, and her family who are watching the proceedings today. And as I foreshadowed, Martine has prepared a family statement with some photographs that I'd like to read on her behalf.
Thank you.
Your Honour, before I can commence, I'll just explain. That's a photograph of Martine with her big brother Rick, and there was 11 years between them. She says, "My brother Richard Steele, lovingly known as Rick by all that knew him, died tragically on the 31st of December 2019 in the Badger Forest Fire. Today I have chosen to read part of the eulogy that I wrote for my brother for his funeral. Rick was a few years older than me, and growing up he was very protective of me. I looked up to him with much love and admiration. When I was born, he renamed me Miss Priss after the scrawny girlfriend from the old cartoon character Foghorn Leghorn, and from that day the name stuck. This is another photo from her family album, Your Honour, of Rick and Martine in the paddling pool. We shared a passion for the Essendon Football Club, and we often shared text messages and calls during the footy season, either cursing their losses or celebrating their wins. Although I think he had a soft spot for Carlton, like his grandfather Frank. Your Honour will see an older photograph of Rick there with his much beloved grandfather Frank. Rick was very close to his grandparents, Frank and Myrtle. Myrtle passed away long before Frank did. Right to the end, Rick made sure that Frank was looked after, his affairs were in order, and that he could stay in his home in Melbourne until it was time for him to move into a care facility. Martine tells the court that Rick was a character. He had a great smile and an easygoing, relaxed nature. He had a knack of making you feel comfortable in his presence by giving you his full attention with his large smile. Rick had moved away from the rat race of the outer region of Sydney after a few years to the south coast, and I believe he finally found a place where he could grow and nurture his plants that had become a very important part of his life. Your Honour, this is a photograph of some of his orchids at the markets. And Your Honour heard earlier Ernie's evidence that he had so many orchids at his property and tended to them. Whilst it may not have been exactly where he thought he would be in life, he was getting close. He developed a passion for growing orchids and elkhorns and created beautiful timber arrangements. He took so much pride in his creations. Your Honour, Rick was also an accomplished fisherman. And here is a photo of one of his catch. Whilst Rick was content with his own company most of the time, he did have a small group of friends down the coast, and I would like to thank them for offering their friendship and support to him. I believe that Rick was finally seeing the light at the end of a very long tunnel and finding his place in the world, surrounding himself with people he loved, respected, and cared for. I guess he accidentally fell into his cleaning and caring role, but he got enjoyment with what he was doing because he felt it was making a difference in people's lives, and making it a little easier for them. Life hasn't always been easy for Rick, but his resilience, determination and strength to put one foot in front of the other each day is something I admire and I am deeply proud of. I would also like to take this opportunity to offer my sincere thanks to Philip Shipton and the Shipton family from Colugalite, who responded to my comment on Facebook when searching for my brother and who gave my details to the Bega Police. In what was such a devastating time for that family, they were able to answer and assist my plea for help when my options were exhausted. My heart goes out to the two RFS gentlemen who discovered my brother after the fire had passed. I cannot even put into words the lasting impact that discovery would have had and will have on them moving forward. I would also like to thank Detective Clinton Oxenbridge from the Bega Police Station. You showed care and compassion in what would have been a very difficult phone call to inform me of Rick's passing, and for keeping me informed as much as you could during such a disastrous event. To Ernie, I cannot begin to imagine what you went through that day, thinking that Rick should have been right behind you as you escaped, only to find out that he didn't make it. I hope that you have found some peace and comfort knowing that there is nothing more that you could have done. I miss my brother greatly, more than words can say. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't think of him. My heart is broken for the time that we will not have and for his life that was lost. Rick was a wonderful person, and I know that his memory will continue to live on in the hearts of all those who knew him.
I'd just like to speak to Martine directly, and I know that you are listening with your family, Martine. I'm so grateful and so moved for those beautiful words that were read out about your brother who you loved so much. So to you and all of those who knew and loved Rick, I'd like to say our thoughts are very much with you today. And thank you for being so generous in letting us get to know your brother a little better. And also thank you for the reminder about the impact of these devastating fires, not only on those who lost loved ones and properties, but also on the first responders. Our thoughts are with you as well today, to the many first responders who have also been so affected by these fires. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honour. Your Honour now has the benefit of the documentary material contained within Exhibit 8 and the oral testimony from Detective Senior Constable Glenn Bradley earlier in the week and Ernie Berger, who we heard from today. Your Honour also has the benefit of hearing those words of Martine Jordan, Richard's sister. At a later stage in Your Honour's inquiry into the 2019-2020 bushfire season, those assisting Your Honour will formally address you on the manner and cause of Mr. Steele's death. In that regard, I can foreshadow now that a formal submission is likely to be made that Richard Steele died on the morning of the 31st of December 2019 at 299 Coolagalite Road in Coolagalite, New South Wales, from thermal injuries during the Badger Forest Fire.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
We will now commence the hearing into the next inquest.
I'll ask now that if you could open the inquest into the death of John Smith. Thank you, Mr. Castleton.
May it please, Your Honour. Before I commence my opening, could I tender an additional statement from Mr. Smith's wife, Josie Smith, dated the 8th of September 2021, if that could be added to Exhibit 9 and placed behind a new tab marked 9A.
Yes, thank you.
May it please, Your Honour. This is an inquest into the death of John Smith. John was a resident of Nerringunda who died after the fire reached his property on the morning of 31 December 2019. John was 71 years of age. At this time, John lived with his wife Josie Smith and their young daughter Emerald, now 11 years of age. John had 3 adult sons prior to meeting Josie: Raphael, David and Sam. Raphael lives in Victoria, David lives in Queensland and Sam lives in Switzerland. We take this opportunity, Your Honour, to acknowledge the tremendous loss suffered by Josie and Emerald and their extended family and friends in Catalina. We also acknowledge Raphael, David and Sam and their families. By way of background, John was trained and worked as a civil engineer. He also worked for many years towards the end of his working life in the cookery and hospitality department at the Maruya TAFE. John retired in 2017. John and Josie lived in Catalina with Emerald. John also had a bush property at 9 Murphy's Ridge Road, Nerringunda, on approximately 200 acres. There was a house and a separate shed. The property was near the Churros River. You know, I just have displayed an aerial photograph of John's property, which is contained within the red circle. You can see the 2 buildings, and to the left of those 2 buildings is the Churros River, which I'll lead some evidence about shortly. On the afternoon of 30 December, John was with Josie in Catalina. They were aware of the Badger Forest fire, and John made the decision to drive to his property and prepare it for the likely fire. When he arrived, he cleaned the roof and removed valuable tools. At around 9 p.m, John called Josie on her mobile phone. He told her that he was on top of the roof to get reception. He asked Josie to check the Fires Near Me app. Josie informed John that the fire was at a watch and act level, and she asked John to return home due to the proximity of the fire. In her statement, she said, "I begged him to come back down to Catalina as I was worried for him, and he promised her he would be back as soon as he could." It's appropriate, Your Honour, that I now read some passages from Josie's statement dated the 8th of January 2020. During that call, John told me he could see the red smoke as he was standing from the roof of the house, but the wind was not coming his way and it was in the opposite direction. I had a very short conversation with him as his phone was getting low and he was going to have his dinner. John was at the property by himself. John had told me that he would call me in the morning. This was the last conversation and contact I had with John. Early in the morning, about 5:45 a.m, on the 31st of December 2019, I checked the Fires Near Me app for an update and saw that the fire went up from Badger towards Wandella and then to the Princess Highway. That was parallel to the property. And then at the same time, there was a separate fire near Dampier, which was making its way towards Bellara Road to Nerringunda. I know that there are 2 roads to our property, which is Kadji Mountain Road and Bellara Road. John could have used one of these roads to drive out of the property and onto the Urabadella Road. That's the main road that goes to the Princess Highway. After I looked at it, I tried to call John's mobile from 5:50 a.m, calling it 5 times, but the call went straight to his message bank. But I didn't leave any messages. I was very frantic at that point. Around 6 a.m, I received an emergency phone call from RFS at Bateman's Bay to evacuate Catalina because there was a fire approaching the area. I waited for my neighbours and packed my belongings. As Josie just said in her statement, that was the last known contact that she had with John, or that anyone, to her knowledge, had with John. It's not known what his movements were from this point onwards, Your Honour, throughout the night and early morning of the 31st of December. The evidence before Your Honour is that the Badger Forest fire impacted the Nerringunda area, including John's property, at around 6 to 8 a.m. the following morning, that is the 31st of December 2019. The fire destroyed John's property. It's not clear from the evidence when this occurred and in what circumstances John drove from the area. I'll just have brought up now, Your Honour, some photographs of the destruction to John's property. And these photographs, Your Honour, were taken in the week following the fire by investigating police. Exhibit 9 contains considerable evidence of the attempts made by Josie to contact John by telephone in the early hours of that morning. In Josie's most recent statement, provided to the court just now, she states the following. At 5 in the morning, I was shocked to see the Fires Near Me app when the fire at Badger had already connected with Wandella and already crossed the Princess Highway. I rang John, but it just went to his voicemail. I panicked and rang him again and again, even though I knew that the phone reception in the bush is very poor. Then my home line rang and it was an emergency service telling us to act because the fire from Mogo was heading towards Bateman's Bay. I didn't know what to do. We had a fire plan at our house, prepared drums of water around the house and long hoses connected to the taps, but our plan was for me to go take my daughter to the evacuation centre while John would fight the fire. But John wasn't there, and I was so scared for him at that moment while panicking about what to do for our house in town. I woke up my 10-year-old daughter, put food in the car and more stuff that we might need in the evacuation centre. It was a very hot morning. At around 8 a.m. that morning, Josie left her Catalina house to evacuate to the Hanging Rock evacuation centre. Josie proceeded to call 000 a number of times throughout the day, but could not get through to emergency services. On the 1st of January, there was still no word from John. Josie contacted 000 again throughout the course of that day. She also contacted friends and asked for help to locate him. On the 2nd of January, she spoke with John's friend Darren Nelson. He told her he would try to get to John's property the following day, when he would likely be able to gain access to that area. On the 3rd of January 2020, John's two friends, Darren Nelson and Kurt Rogan, drove to the property to look for him. Kurt will give evidence in these proceedings shortly. Your Honour will hear evidence that Darren and Kurt located John's car, a Subaru Forester, burnt out on the side of Murphy's Ridge Road. There was no sign of John in his car. The following day, the 5th of January, local RFS members, New South Wales Police and a number of John's friends searched for John. ADF also undertook a search by helicopter. Tragically, Your Honour, it was not until the following morning, at around 7 a.m. on the 6th of January 2020, that Kurt continued searching and located some remains he believed to be of John. These were found approximately 50 metres from the burnt-out car in a gully and approximately 500 metres from the main house on the property. Investigating police attended the and inspected the Subaru, which was positioned against a tree with damage consistent with a heavy impact. It was the view of these officers that John Smith had been driving his car south, lost tyre traction and slid and collided with a tree. It appears that John attempted to continue south on foot but was unable to escape the fire. The police collected the remains and these were later confirmed to be those of John Smith. Josie recalls the following as set out in her further statement. I went to the property after John's funeral on February 3, 2020, and I saw the devastation the fire had left. I was like in an apocalyptic world. The bush that was once so thick and green was so bare, brown with black trees standing. When I saw the burnt car, it was less than a year-old Subaru Forester, but it looked like a skeleton car. When we went to the shed, which I used as my art studio before, I could only see shattered glasses and corrugated iron roof everywhere. Some of the corrugated iron was already hanging on the top of the huge tree. When I look at the house, it was crumbled and totally destroyed. But the little tool shed, where the tools were kept, and was one of the reasons John had to stay that night, because he wanted to move some tools from the tool shed for safety, is still standing. Your Honour, that concludes my opening remarks in relation to the inquest into the death of John Smith. If it's convenient to Your Honour, could I please call Mr. Kurt Rogan?
Yes. Mr. Rogan, can you see and hear us?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. You'll just hear from the court officer now, who'll ask if you'd like to take the oath or affirmation.
Mr. Rogan, I'm going to swear you in, Mr. Rogan, are you there? Mr. Rogan, can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Mr. Rogan, I'm going to swear you in. Do you wish to take the oath or the affirmation?
Oh, whatever.
Silence, please. Do you solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Mr. Rogan, would you please state your full name?
Kurt Stephen Rogan.
And Mr. Rogan, have you provided a statement to New South Wales Police dated the 29th of January 2020?
Yep.
And do you have a copy of your statement with you this morning?
Oh, it's on my phone, but yeah, I know what I said.
Can I ask you firstly, how long had you known John Smith for?
10 years or more.
And did you own a property near to where John's property was located?
Within 20 kilometres, yeah.
And did you play cricket with John Smith in the local cricket team?
That's correct, yep.
And what was the name of that cricket team?
Just the Narragunda Cricket Club.
Had you been out to John's property on Murphy's Ridge Road before?
Yes, several times.
How would you describe the general area around his property?
Forest, bush, thick bush.
And did it sit up on a ridge?
The property itself wasn't necessarily on a ridge, it was down on the river flat.
And that's the Churros River flat to which you refer, I take it?
Yes, that's correct.
On the 30th of December 2019, were you in Sydney?
I'm sorry, what date was that? The
30 December 2019.
Yes, I was. I left on the 31st.
And why did you leave Sydney firstly on the 31st of December 2019?
Because I became aware that there was a fire burning in the vicinity of my property.
And what time did you leave on the 31st of December 2019?
4 o'clock in the morning.
And what was the purpose of you leaving?
To go down and maybe try and save my property.
And for Her Honour's benefit, what was the address of that property that you were heading to on the 31st of December?
It's lot 3, Bryce's Road, Narragunda.
And were you going to meet up with a mutual friend of yours and John's, a man by the name of Darren Nelson?
Sorry?
Sorry, I didn't wish to cut you off. Did you say no?
No, I was just going down to my own property, but I was called by Darren that morning at about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and he said, you might as well not bother coming down because there would be nothing left.
And did you come to learn at some point on the 31st of December or thereabouts that no one had had any contact with your friend John Smith?
No, that wasn't until about the 1st when we spoke to Josie.
Between the 31st and the 3rd of January 2020, were you able to access your property or not?
No, it was totally cut off from fallen trees and debris.
I'm having some difficulty receiving your evidence, but did you just say that it was cut off because of fallen trees?
That's correct, yes.
And I take it you're referring to access roads into your and out of your property were inaccessible because of fallen trees as a result of the fires?
Yeah, I heard something before that Balaura Road, which is the main road, that was cut off, and virtually every other road around there was cut off.
Thank you. Your Honour, I'm having difficulty hearing what Mr Rogan's saying. I am worried about the transcript and
Yes.
whether that may cause difficulties for transcription. I'm just wondering whether we're able to fix that or whether it may be easier if Mr Rogan was to just to call in on the telephone.
I'll just go off the bench for a couple of minutes and see if we can improve things. So it won't be long, Mr Rogan.
Okay.
Silence, please all stand as Coroners calls temporary adjournment. Please on stand.
Thank you for the time, Your Honour. I'm instructed that the technical difficulties that we're experiencing in court cannot be resolved immediately, and that what we propose, Your Honour, is to persevere. Can I just ask Mr Rogan to assist with transcription? If you could just slow down your speech when you come to respond to questions, and that may assist certainly those who are here at Lidcombe receive your evidence. Thank you, sir. Mr Rogan, did you get to your place on the 3rd of January?
Yes.
And it took you some time to get there, did it not, because roads were blocked and trees needed to be moved and the like?
Yep, pretty much all day.
And do I understand that, unfortunately, you lost your property as a result of the fires?
That's correct.
And can I ask you, sir, whether you've been able to rebuild in the time since the fires went through your property or not?
No.
Do you have any plan to rebuild at this stage or not?
I'm still undecided.
Can I ask why that is?
I just don't know whether it's worth rebuilding again in that area.
Did you, together with Darren Nelson, undertake a search for John on the 3rd of January 2020?
No.
When did you first undertake your search?
The following day, the 4th.
And were you with Darren Nelson on that day?
Yes.
Was anyone else with you, or was it just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
And at that point in time, the 4th of January, what had you learnt about the whereabouts of John since the fire went through on the 31st of December, if anything?
Nothing. Like I say, we went down to try and find him and couldn't locate him on the 4th, and Josie had been ringing to ask if anyone had heard from him or seen him, so that's when we went down and had a look.
And can you describe what you discovered when you undertook your search? And I take it this is a search along Murphy's Ridge Road in the vicinity of John's property?
Well, we actually had to walk in there for the 4 kilometres to get to his property. We found the vehicle off the side of the road. The house was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. We conducted a search around the river thinking he might have made it to the river and it might have been injured, but we couldn't locate him anywhere.
Could you just describe, please, why it was you had to walk in 4 kilometres? What was the problem in terms of vehicular access, if any?
Yeah, he couldn't drive on the road. It was just covered with trees.
Were you able to locate John's body on the 4th of January, on that day that you first walked in to search for him?
No.
You located the car, correct?
That's correct, yes.
What direction was the car facing, do you recall?
Towards his actual property, towards the house.
And was it on the road or on the side of the road?
No, about 10 metres off the road.
And had it come to rest on any object from your observations?
Yeah, against the tree.
And did you observe any damage to the vehicle that may have been caused by a collision with a tree or not?
Yeah, it had major front end damage.
Are you able to describe how the car appeared? Was there any remnants of the vehicle intact or not?
Oh, it was just a shell of a car. Yeah, there was hardly anything left. The rims had melted, the engine block or the rocker covers had melted to aluminium liquid.
Did you, on that occasion, as you've located the car, find any possessions that may have belonged to John or not?
Yeah, a mobile phone and a pair of glasses, or glasses in a case.
And where were they in proximity to the motor vehicle?
They were on the actual road itself, indicating that he dropped them at some point in time.
And at this point in time, that is the 4th of January 2020, when you've observed the car that has impacted with the tree, did you know it was John's car at that point in time or not? Or did you just draw the conclusion that it was his car?
Well, my friend Darren was pretty sure that it was his car. I didn't know what he was driving at the times, but we believed that it was probably his because he'd never seen that vehicle there before, and he goes down there quite regularly.
Now you've found some personal belongings. Did you then undertake a search of that general area? That is,
yes.
You and Darren, or not?
Yes.
And did you walk a circular area of the car in general terms or not?
We covered a lot of ground that day and failed to find him, yeah.
Did you then return subsequent to the 4th of January to carry out further searches for John?
Yes, the following day with another friend of John's named Murray.
And on that occasion, did you yourself locate John?
Yes, I did.
Now, I appreciate, Mr. Rogan, that this may be quite distressful for you. I thank you in advance. I'll just have brought up a diagram that you provided to police, which is annexed to your statement. Now, firstly, am I correct in understanding that that's a diagram that you produced for police?
Yep, that looks like it.
And if we start at the bottom and work at the bottom of the page and work towards the top, you've identified in general terms where John's house was located, correct?
Yes.
And as you've said in your evidence, and which is confirmed in your diagram, the car that you located was facing in the direction of John's house, and you've essentially said that was about 400 metres down from the house. Is that correct?
Yep, roughly, yep.
Now, you've then, just for her honour's benefit, you've mentioned in your evidence the Churros River. As one looks at your diagram, is the Churros River located on the left-hand side of the page?
Well, the shot that you showed before of John's house in conjunction with the river runs beside that on the left-hand side of the page that you're looking at, and then it wraps all the way around the bottom of the page and then continues along. So it loops around his property.
Thank you. Where you've drawn in the car is the Churros River to the left of the car and perhaps even parallel to it?
Yes, to the left and in front down towards the house as well. It runs along the front of the house part of with the drawing as well.
And do I understand your diagram correctly that when you came upon John's body, which you've marked on your diagram, it was near a gully?
It was in a gully, yes.
And about 40 to 50 metres from where you first located a mobile phone and some glasses?
That's correct.
Now, can I ask you this? Are you able to explain from what you've observed in the area of car and where John was found as to why he may have been on that side of the road and not on the same side of the road as the car towards the river, or not?
I would think that he was totally disillusioned by smoke and fire, that he's just thought that that's the quickest place to get into some cover.
And again, do you have a theory as to why it was that his car is facing towards his house and not away from his house, or not?
Yeah, I think he's tried to make a run for it and then realised he couldn't get out, and he's turned around to try and get back to his house, and he's run off the road because he probably couldn't see the road.
Because of the poor
Smoke.
visibility.
Yep.
By reason of the smoke and perhaps even flames.
Yes, for sure.
Now, did you then return again to that area where John was found on the 6th of January 2020 with New South Wales Police?
They asked me to come and direct them to where the body was. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rogan. They are my questions. There may be some further questions from other parties.
I'll just find out if you just wait a moment, Mr. Rogan. Mr. Free, any questions?
No questions, Your Honour.
Mr. Glascott, any
I have
questions?
no questions, Your Honour. Thank you.
Mr. Rogan, thanks very much for giving your evidence today. I know it must have been really difficult to talk about such a difficult time, such a traumatic time. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And you are now excused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honour, that concludes the evidence in relation to the inquest into the death of John Smith. Could I invite John's wife, Josie Smith, into the virtual courtroom, who is going to give a family statement?
Yes, thank you. Josie, are you there? Oh, we can see you. Can you see and hear us? Josie, can you see and hear us? Have you got your microphone on? Just make sure your microphone's not on mute.
You can't hear me, can you?
Could you just say that again, please? I might have to ask Mr. Rogan. You have to, if you wouldn't mind, just finishing your connection, Mr. Rogan. And now we've got Josie. We've got you on the screen. Can you see and hear us?
I can actually hear you, and I can see you as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, we're very lucky that we've got you here on the screen. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Now, would you like to say something about John?
Yes, I can.
If we have some trouble hearing you, well, I'll just let you know. But we'll just start and see how we go. But it looks like it's a bit of a difficult connection at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to quote my Uncle Coco, who stayed at our house for a month when they had their vacation in Australia. He said, John is the nicest person that I've ever known in my life. With other people who know John deeply, I totally agree with what my uncle said. I've known John since the year 2006, and considering that we had different culture, different personality, and started with a communication gap because English is my second language, we established a strong and happy relationship and harmonious family. We always respected, he always respected me as a person and encouraged me to show the best in me. John had a civil engineering degree and worked some projects in Sydney and built a community building in the UK. He stopped working as an engineer and he retired as an employee at TAFE Maria. His family, friends, and colleagues know how intelligent John was. He was a man who could talk anything under the sun, with full of knowledge and confidence. He loved researching and learning about anything. He knew a lot about politics, religion, culture, places, people, and even cars. My daughter even said jokingly that her daddy could be a very good prime minister. John was the friendliest man I've ever met. He always wore a smile and greeted people and talked to them. My friends, family, and relatives in the Philippines loved him because even if they don't know how to communicate with him because of lack of English, his friendly gestures would make them comfortable around him. I've never encountered a father as dedicated as John when we had our daughter Emerald in November 2009. He supported me in any way he could. He was a very hands-on daddy and an amazing father. He taught Emerald many things in life since she was a baby. And today, as I look at Emerald, at 11 years old, she's a living legacy of her father. His strength, her grandeur, her positive attitude, her wisdom, her caring and loving nature resonate with John's. John's very good friend and colleague, Debbie, described him as a true gentleman, sincere, generous, kind, and witty. Always thoughtful of others and their needs. He was a jack of all trades and a master of the pen. And another friend of John wrote, also said that it was always a pleasure to see John with his easygoing friendliness and his well-thought conversations. As well as being strong and capable, he was also kind and gentle. John was a man of many talents. He was a musician, composed his own songs, and he was good at arts. We lost everything in the property in the bushfire, but among the debris were his 5 sculptures and that went black but survived. I have them in my garden now as a memorial, with the old fence post from the property that was half burned. They represent the 2019 summer bushfire for me, with a sculpture of a torso of a man and a woman as men and women who lost their lives, the sculpture of the eagle and a wild boar as a wildlife that died in the fire, and a sculpture of the feast that reminded me of the strength that people had after going through a traumatic experience and loss. The timber post represents the trees that were burned and survived during the fire. So I built the memorial in my garden, and I call this part of my garden as John's Corner. I built it myself to honor my loving and amazing husband and the greatest father of my daughter, and to value that what survived from the bushfire and the story behind them.
Thank you so much, Josie, for sharing those beautiful words about John, and it really helps us to get to know who John was, and he sounds like he was a wonderful man, and I know it is a very big loss for you and for Emerald, and so our thoughts are with you and with John's extended family and friends today. Thank you so much.
I also would like to read this lyrics of the song that John.
We're having a bit of trouble with the connection again. Could you say that again, please, Josie?
Yeah, I have a photo of John here with the lyrics of his song. You would allow me that I could read the song that he composed.
Yes.
So the song is titled Debris. I looked up in the sky at the stars that shine, reached up with my hands and asked which one of them was mine. I feel like I have fallen like a shower of summer rain. I looked out at the debris and the little that remains. Was it just a bad dream to make me wonder why all of these characters that take the stage then die? Looking like a ship with the wind beneath its sail, become on the water of some wet country lake.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Castleton.
Thank you, Ron. I understand Josie has provided some photographs of her and Emerald and John. Perhaps if those could be displayed
Oh, lovely.
now.
Thank you. We'll watch them now.
Your Honour, that's the memorial that Josie spoke about a moment ago.
Oh, I see.
And then I think the next photograph is some of the sculptures that she also mentioned.
It's John's corner. Beautiful.
And they're the words that Josie just spoke in relation to John's song, Debris.
Thank you. Beautiful photos.
My pleasure, Your Honour. Your Honour now has the benefit of the documentary material contained within Exhibit 9, together with the oral testimony from Detective Senior Constable Glenn Bradley, given earlier this week, and just now from John's friend Kurt Rogan. Your Honour also has the benefit of hearing from Josie Smith, John's wife, by way of a family statement. At a later stage in Your Honour's inquiry to the 2019-2020 bushfire season, those assisting Your Honour will formally address Your Honour on the manner and cause of John Smith's death. In that regard, Your Honour, I can foreshadow now that a formal submission is likely to be made that John Smith died on 31 December 2019 at Lot 9, Murphy's Ridge Road in Erringunda, here in New South Wales, from thermal injuries during the Badger Forest fire. Your Honour, that concludes at this stage the inquest into the death of John Smith. Could I invite Your Honour to stand over that inquest generally to the second stage of Your Honour's inquiry, commencing Monday the 5th of September 2022?
Yes, I do that now.
And could Your Honour also make the same order in relation to the inquest into the death of Richard Steele?
Yes, I do that in relation to Richard Steele as well.
Your Honour, that concludes Your Honour's inquiry into the Badger Forest fire and the Kundella fire and the 7 related inquests. Next week, Your Honour, will be inquiring into the Werryberry fire, which is scheduled for hearing on Monday, the 13th of September 2021. On that occasion, Your Honour will receive evidence from Detective Senior Constable Glenn Bradley, who was the officer in charge. Your Honour will also receive evidence from Detective Senior Sergeant Gregory Moon, from Darren Howell, fire investigator for the RFS, and 2 members of the RFS, Jake Rorty and John Inskip. It's hoped that Your Honour's inquiry into the Werryberry fire can be concluded on Monday of next week. And then on the following Tuesday, the 14th of September 2021, Your Honour's inquiry into the cause and origin of the Green Valley fire is scheduled to commence. And the remainder of that week will be preoccupied with that fire and the inquest into the death of Samuel McPaul.
Thank you, Mr. Castleton. Unless there's anything from either of the parties, we'll finish today. Adjourn to Monday the 13th of September at 10 a.m. All right, thank you. We're adjourned.
Silence, please, all stand. This coroner's court